Hey everyone, welcome back to Rhythm Railroad. So today's video is going to be on my CATS panel and some progress that I've made there, along with some physical things that I've done on the layout to reflect what's happening on the CATS panel. So I'm going to get a little closer to the panel itself and show you what I've been doing and why I've been doing it. If you've been watching videos on my layout, this was always the plan. But I was finally able to get the signaling figured out to reflect that plan. So just to give an overview, the trains that come in to the staging yard, which is here, the lower staging yard, are coming southbound. And when they come in, they take the diverging route for inbound. So the diverging route splits into 4 tracks, right? And then once they hit this point right here, which is pretty much the halfway point, then they're in the what I consider the outbound side of the staging. So the reason I did that, and the reason why I split it, is because I have so much length in all 4 tracks here that I was able to stack trains on each track. So in my situation, you could stack basically 2 long trains, or if you really want to, you could do 3 short trains. But the problem is that when you have that, you need to show that so that if anybody's running a train and they're coming in behind another train, for example, let's say right here on this track 4, yes, this is available here. It's not occupied, but there's a train in front on the second half of the staging. So I wanted to be able to show that with signaling in order to avoid any accidents. So what I ended up doing was I put LED lights at the halfway point of the tracks, which, by the way, can hold each side of the track can hold about 30 to 35 cars, and I tried to split it as evenly as possible so that they're the same amount of distance on either end. So this way I'm not guessing what size train I could fit in there. So I put LED lights in the tracks right after the gap of the halfway point. And if you want to see physically what it is, it's basically, this is the halfway point here at the the peninsula, and you can see the LEDs are in the tracks themselves. Some are right now showing red and some green. In fact, the only green one right now is that track 2. And again, the reason I wanted to do that was because if a train is coming in on any track, you should be able to see whether you can proceed past the halfway point or not. And what I did in order to make that possible for anybody running trains here is that I added cameras to the lower staging for 2 reasons. Number one, because you need to see that halfway point, which, by the way, is right here in this corner. You can see the LEDs right there, and the camera doesn't pick up the red as well as the way it looks here in person, but it's easy to see when you're standing here. And you can see the halfway point. I just kind of drew a line there just to kind of show it easily instead of like me looking for gaps. And obviously the lights now really help see that. So I basically put a red LED and a green LED in the track, like right next to each other, to show whether you have whether you have permission to proceed or not. And that's also reflected here, obviously. So you can see the 3 tracks are red, and the only one that's green is track 2. The other issue that I had, and why I added cameras, was because eventually all of this lower staging stuff is going to be covered with a skirt for the layout. So you're not going to be able to see physically, like if you're standing here, you're not going to be able to see into the lower staging, and this is going to be the only viewpoint. Unless something happens, and obviously I'll pull the skirt aside and go in there and fix it. But I don't want people to have to depend on physically like kneeling down and looking into the staging yard for that. I want them to be able to see it from here. So the way it works, with the inbound trains, they're reflected here. This would be the way they come in from the diverging route. And the outbound trains, which would be on this side, are these that are right here. So obviously you only see 3 trains here because track 2 is not occupied, which is reflected right here. Okay, now also notice that, for example, track 4, where this RM80 is showing occupied for the first half, but not the second half, right? So the back end is unoccupied, which potentially you could stick another train in there as long as it's not too long. And then same thing's happening here on track 1. The back end of track 1 is also available. So if the dispatcher were to, run out of room, like let's say every train is up at the front of the outbound part, right? And there's nowhere to go. The dispatcher can actually stack another train right now in track 4 or in track 1, not counting track 2, which would be like, let's say, a through track for right now. But as the trains come in, you see them coming through here. The cameras are not exactly the way I want them in sequence, but they come in through here. Then you'll from this point, the next camera would be here. You'd see it come through, and then you get to the point or the camera that shows that halfway point. So again, if you're coming in on track 4, which is this further one out here, you would see your train appear, and then obviously you would stop before this red LED because it's saying do not proceed. Otherwise, you're going to smash into that RM80. So the thing that I was having trouble with was that the signaling logic, which happens in CATs, it's almost like it happens automatically. You don't have to like write it in like you would on Panel Pro. Like on Panel Pro, you literally have to write out what you want the signals to do, which I guess it's more customizable, but it's not. This is more user friendly. Like you just kind of you design the heads themselves, but there's like a whole chart on how you want the heads to behave, whether it's a slow speed or medium speed, high speed, or it's a direction thing or whatever. But there's options, there's pull downs that you can choose from. So, anyways, the problem with the CATS system though is that when you set the tracks up, you also have to tell the system how you want those tracks to behave, whether it's like a CTC type situation or ABS or any other category that's available, and so that dictates how the signals are going to work. Originally, all I did was plop these signals in here, right, to represent the LEDs that are down there, but the signals need to see something in front of them in order for them to have some kind of response or to have the right aspect, so that you can tell the engineer what's coming ahead. So as you probably know, when you see if there's a red at the end of the line, the previous signal should be yellow, and the previous signal before that should be also yellow. But this is a kind of like a weird situation where it's not it's like a typical thing that you see. So what I kind of did was I tried to trick the system by making these signals not have a yellow at all. And in fact, when it triggers a yellow, which is basically what's happening here, so the white signals here are basically representing red, like just completely stop and do not proceed. So if this is a red, then this theoretically should be yellow. But what I did is I set the tracks on this section here to ABS, and then I also set these heads to just go red or green. And if it looks at it and it sees a yellow, let's say it does turn yellow here, it's still going to turn green on the LED because I don't have a yellow. So that's kind of like how I tricked the system when I went into my programming, and that helped. But here's the problem with that: when you're using that, if this signal is red, then you can't make this green, right? Because no matter how much you try, it's gonna show you that it's a yellow, because what you have coming up next is a stop, right? So you can't have a green there. And so what happened was, when I had this second half of the track connected all the way through, with the block split right there for the turnout. I wasn't able to get it to do that. And what I wanted to do was, as soon as the train was, as soon as the block was clear, no matter what was happening here, I wanted it to show in green, right? I didn't want it to read that. I wanted it to just go green, so that you can stack the train all the way up to the stopping point, which is actually here where these red LEDs are. Now these red LEDs are not hooked up to any decoders or any kind of SE8Cs or anything like that. They're just showing where the gaps are, so you don't run the gap and then you short circuit the loop. But they will eventually be able to be controlled as signals, like what I have here. So now, basically, when the trains come in, they're still in CTC territory, but then as soon as they come into these two sections of each track, both of them are ABS. And the reason for that is because, obviously, as soon as you clear a block, like let's say, well, I can actually show you on the fly here with just forcing the blocks. So let's say you have a train coming in, right? So this would be blocked, this would be occupied rather. So I'm gonna occupy that block. And then it sees, well, the engineer's not gonna see anything. They're just gonna come in. And all they're looking for is that halfway point. And right now, track 4, like I said, is showing red. So if the dispatcher decides to do that, then fine. They can go in and they're gonna have to, they're gonna go into this block. It's gonna occupy, and then when it gets to this point, there's gonna be obviously a red signal here, which is the LED that you see there. Now, when I decide, hey, I want to move that train on track 4 out so I can make space for the train behind it. So there's RM80, right? I'll line that up to continue, and then so that train will be here, and then and then what happens is, that train would obviously occupy this block here, and then let's say it went on and the back end was clear of this block. This would be unoccupied, and now watch what happens to the signal. It turns green. Now theoretically it shouldn't, because there's a red signal here, so it should turn yellow, but it's turning green. You can see it here also. See how it changed to green? I'll show you on the track itself. It's easy to see right there. So now that train would be sitting right there waiting for that other train to get ahead of it right here. So the reason why it turns green is because I tricked the system into thinking that there's another signal here that's always green. And I'll show you how I did that in 1 second. So then obviously this train would occupy this block, and as soon as it does that, well, before I do that, let's say this train is gone now. It's like way up on into the layout. So I'm gonna unoccupy. Don't worry about the label, it's gonna stay there, but it doesn't matter. Now this train would move ahead to this block, occupy block, and then you see that this turns red now because there's nowhere to go if you were coming in from behind, and it's also reflected there obviously on track 4. Okay, so let's say the train comes through and it clears that block completely where the halfway point is no longer occupied, so I'm going to unoccupy that. Right? So now, again, the dispatcher has the opportunity to get another train back there if he or she wants to. So unoccupy that. So that's how basically you would figure things out if you're running a train, right? So the next train would come in and obviously, once again, would have to stop because it's a red signal there. The train on track 2, let's say you have like an express train or something that needs to get through, priority train, and the dispatcher tries to just do like a run through on track 2. Well, it's showing green all the way through, except with this exception here. And again, the reason is because there's really a signal in here where that gap is that's always green. And so I would line this up here. Let me just clear this this other thing because I just well, whatever. I would line it up here on track 2, and then obviously, give it the route. But notice it's still green. It hasn't changed there. Then obviously as a train would come through, it would occupy this block. Right? This stays green because it's not looking behind it, it's looking in front of it. And then once I occupy this block, it turns red, right? Also reflecting here on track 2. Right? Then I would clear the back end of the block. Still red because the train's still sitting here. And obviously this would be on this block by now, continuing through. And then the back of the train would eventually clear this block. And obviously because it's ABS, it's going to go to the least restrictive lighting or aspect automatically. So once I unblock this, it goes back to green. And once again, we're clear here. So now the dispatcher can bring another train through there, or at least up to the front of the staging yard there. Now, like I said, eventually these lights are going to also be able to turn green and red, so that if a dispatcher wants to say, okay, let's get an RT45 on the road here, that signal will turn green, and it'll also turn green here. That's the next step. Okay, I haven't done that yet. Now, how did I trick the system? Well, I don't know if this is the best way to do this, but it's working. So even though it doesn't look so pretty with this gap here, I don't really care. What I did was, let me just go to my design panel here. You can see in the design panel there's an extra, oh my, sorry about that. There's an extra block that I kind of just forced in there, right? I made a little gap and then I put like a fake block in there with its own signal. And those signals are, I set them up, I'll show you. In the logic, I set it up so that they're basically always green. So these are all the heads I've designed, and just some of them are test heads and some of them are just things that I've been messing with. Most of the heads on the layout are double-headed heads, but I have these, I have some staging stuff and whatever. So I made this extra one called Always Green. Now there's no details because it's just a fake block, right? So there's no like address, there's no decoder attached to it. So that's why, since that's always green, it allows for the previous signal to go to green, even though there's a red signal there. So that's how you trick it, okay? The other thing that I had to do was that the block, you can see it's gray, not white. That's because I had to not show that. I didn't want that signal to show. Otherwise, I'd have to, also click on that. But what I did is when I defined the block, I just took the check mark off this show block option. And this way, it doesn't show any of that at all. The signal, the track, or anything. And that's why when you see it on the actual panel, let me just go back to that. It disappears right there, right? So all 4 of them are gone. And you don't see the signal because it's just like an invisible green signal basically. So that's what I had to do, and like I said, it worked. Now I did run into a little problem which I wasn't even aware of with other logic that I was putting around the layout, but by mistake I had left a title or a username inside that other panel that I showed you where you assign an address. I had left, like, I think it said like outbound track 4. It just had the title, but it didn't have any addresses or anywhere to pull it from. Like, it wasn't even assigned to LocoNet or anything like that. But because of that, it was basically misfiring because it was looking for that block, for that name, which is attached to another block, obviously. So by literally, all I had to do was erase that, and then all of a sudden everything worked perfectly fine. So that was the solution to the problem. And again, maybe there's a better way to do this, but like I said, it doesn't really matter to me right now. This is working without any problems, and it's reflecting perfectly fine on the layout and also here on the panel. The only thing that I'm not loving, and I think I might know how to fix it, is that, like, let's say you have a train here, right, waiting to leave. If you don't do anything, you leave the label there, and you just run the train into this block, watch what happens. The block does not allow for the label to move forward because it's not seeing this next block, right? So it's an adjacent block in between here. So theoretically, the label should move here and then there. So right now I have to move it manually once I decide to send the train on its way. But I think the solution might be the same thing that I did with this here, where the trains were coming through and then the label had nowhere to go, right? There's no adjacent block there, so it would get stuck here even though the train was going to the other side and running around the loop, right? But now it works because what I did was, which is again a little silly thing that I didn't even realize, that you can assign where where the end of this block is going to end up, proceeding to. So this tile here, which is what they call, each little cell of information, is assigned to jump to the tile on this side. So then the label moves through. So I think what I'm going to do is I haven't tried yet, but try to see if I can set this tile to end up here rather than there. So the block or this signal might still see the signal, but the label will jump here because that's the next thing that's going to be shown as occupied. I think that might be the solution. But I'll be trying that sometime soon, next few days. So that's basically it. All I had to do was figure that out, figure out the system, and now everything's working the way I wanted to from the beginning. I had it working on JMRI. Like if you go back and look at some of my really old videos, I had it working with JMRI Panel Pro because Panel Pro's ABS does not behave like this. At least the way I had it set up, it would automatically go into ABS mode, which means like as soon as you clear a block, it would just turn green, no matter what was in front of it. So, but this is more realistic. This is what should be happening, where the signal is looking to see if there's a red or anything, whatever is in front of it. It's going to give you the next option to be able to kind of foresee what's happening with the signals, right? So I'm excited about that because now when I run my sessions, I don't have to tell people to go through a red signal in the middle of the staging down there, right? Now they actually can see it themselves. Now, once I fix the outer signals, which would be here, the nice thing is that the LEDs are already in place. But once I fix that, then I don't have to tell them anything. They could just see their own signal once I clear them, and I don't have to be on the radio with them telling them to just go through the red and proceed. So that's basically it, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.